preposition phrase and the verb phrase.
Professor,
Okay, Khadija? Yes.
talking about the noun phrase, the noun phrase consists of an optional determiner. The noun is obligatory. We need to have a noun in the noun phrase because it's the head. And we may have a prepositional phrase optional and a complement optional.
Complement. Don't talk about the complement, okay? Because the complement is not optional. Okay. So yeah, the main components, okay, the categories in a noun phrase are. So the lexical category, which is the noun, is obligatory, and all other elements are phrasal. So we have the determiner, we have the adjective phrase, and the preposition phrase. Okay. Now we move on to the adjective phrase. Yes,
Professor,
please.
may I answer?
Somebody else?
So,
Yes,
Professor,
please.
Professor.
Yes, Mr. Smail.
Yes, Professor. In the adjective phrase, the only lexical category is the adjective, whereas the other elements are phrases. And the other elements may be the adverb phrase, which modifies the lexical category, which is adjective.
Okay. Right. So in an adjective phrase, the head is the adjective, and it's lexical, and it is pre-modified by an adverb phrase. Okay. Now, what about the adverb phrase? The rules of an adverb phrase.
Professor,
Professor, please, can you speak up?
Mr. Omar?
in the adverb phrase, the adverb is the head of the phrase, and it consists of only an adverb. It doesn't modify by any other lexical terms.
Okay, so the adverb phrase consists of an obligatory head, okay, which is the adverb, okay, and is optionally pre-modified by an adverb phrase, okay. For example, very quickly. Okay, so the adverb phrase consists of an obligatory head, which is lexical, and another optional phrasal category, which is the adverb phrase. Now we move on to the preposition phrase. Please raise your hands. Preposition phrase. What are the categories? Okay, Yasir?
the head of the preposition phrase is a preposition, and the only optional modifier allowed is a noun phrase that comes after the head.
Okay, yes, Mr. Yasir, but there is something wrong here. So, yeah, it is optional. Of course, it is optional. But so in a preposition phrase, the head is the preposition, and optionally followed by an NP. But the NP is not a modifier because the preposition takes the NP as its complement. Okay, this is a rule for the preposition phrase. So preposition phrases take NPs as their complements. Okay, finally, the VP. What are the phrase structure rules of the VP?
Professor?
Okay, Ms. Khadija.
The verb phrase consists of an obligatory verb, two optional noun phrases, and optional prepositional phrases.
Okay, and the adverb phrase. Okay, so in the verb phrase, we may have only the verb. This is the case of intransitive verbs, or we may have only the verb and an adverb. So the adverb phrase can precede or follow the verb. Okay, and the adverbs are phrasal and optional. We will also have a noun phrase. This is the case of transitive verbs. And in the case of ditransitive verbs, we should have two noun phrases. Okay, and we may have a prepositional phrase as well. Okay, for example, frequently he frequently gave her a book last week at school, for example. So here we have all the categories. We have an adverb phrase before the verb and another adverb phrase after the verb. We have two NPs because the verb is ditransitive. We have a prepositional phrase at school, and we have another adverb phrase, okay, last year. Okay, now today we are going to cover the clauses. Okay, so the clauses. What are the components of a clause or sentence? Of course, in a sentence, we find the subject, okay, and the verb. Okay, in other words, we find the subjects and the predicate. The predicate, the verb, and what comes after the verb. So all the time, the sentence is divided into two parts: the NP, which is the subject, and the VP, which is, okay, the predicate. So the sentence is TP, tense phrase. We may call it S, okay, sentence. So we have the subject, the NP, and the predicate, which is the verb phrase. Here is an example. Bill frequently got his packets from the store for $1. So here, the sentence is the whole thing, so TP. The subject is Bill NP, between bracket and diagram. Okay, Bill, and the VP is frequently got his packets from the store for $1. Okay, this is the tree structure. The TP, the sentence is always divided into the subject, which is the NP, and the VP. So the subject is a noun. Pronouns and proper nouns, etc., are all nouns. Okay, so the NP, then the noun Bell. So what do we have in the VP? We have other smaller constituents. Okay, so we have the adverb phrase, which is then adverb, then frequently. Remember that in a phrase, only the head that should be lexical. So the verb phrase, only the verb which is lexical. Here we have phrase, 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 phrase. Okay, so then the verb got, then the NP. The determiner is always branched with the noun. Okay, the NP, determiner, noun. The PP, the first preposition phrase from the store, and the second preposition phrase. So remember that the preposition always takes the NP as its complement. Okay, so the preposition always takes the NP as its complement. Okay, so again, this is the rule of the VP that we have just talked about. Okay, we said the VP contains an obligatory lexical category, which is the head, pre-modified by an adverb phrase and followed by an NP, which is the object, and adjuncts, which are optional. They could be adjuncts, as we said last time, are recursive, which means you can have as many adjuncts as possible, but you cannot have more than two complements. Okay?
Professor,
Yes?
I can't hear you very well. Please, can you speak up?
What about the others? The others, if it's only your problem.
No, we hear
Okay.
you clear.
No,
It's clear,
Right.
Professor. It's clear.
We hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. So we move on if there is no question about this tree. Now pay attention to the function of preposition phrases. Now, can anyone tell me the difference in terms of the syntactic function between the first preposition phrase of poems and the second preposition from the library? I bought a book of poems from the library. Does anyone know the difference in terms of the syntactic functions, okay, between the first preposition phrase and the second preposition phrase? Yes, please.
So
So yes here?
the preposition of poems refers to the object book, but the second preposition from the library stands on its own.
It doesn't stand on its own, but it modifies the verb. Okay, it modifies the verb. So the difference is this. I bought a book of poems from the library. So the first preposition phrase of poems modifies or completes the meaning of the noun book. Which book? Book of poems. And from the library has nothing to do with the NP, okay, book, but it refers to the verb buy. I bought from which place? From the library. So pay attention to the modification. The first preposition phrase modifies the NP, completes its meaning. The second preposition phrase, okay, refers to the verb. This is very interesting because when you are drawing the tree, you should know from which node you are going to branch a certain phrase. Okay, so this is very clear here. So look at the VP. So the first preposition phrase, which is of poems, completes the meaning of the NP a book, so it must belong to the NP from this node. It must belong to the NP. But the second preposition phrase modifies the verb, so it must belong to the VP. Okay, any question? Is it clear? Please remember this difference in terms of modification. What modifies what? Remember the golden rule. Okay, modifiers are always branched within the node or within the phrase they modify. Any question about the difference between the two prepositional phrases? So if you have it in the exam, then pay attention. You have to know whether a prepositional phrase modifies the noun or modifies the verb. Okay, so TPs, which means sentences, can also include other items. This is very interesting. So look at this sentence. I bought a book of poems from the library. So we have been talking about sentences without auxiliaries. Now, what about if we have, I will buy a book of poems from the library, or I have bought, okay, or I have been buying. Now, this is what we are going to talk about, okay? So we're going to talk about auxiliaries. Okay, how are we going to generate them? So sentences or TPs can also include other items, including elements of the category T, such as modal verbs, may, must, etc. are called modal verbs. Okay, and auxiliary verbs, was, words, etc. Negation not, and infinitive to in tense forms, past, present, etc. So the auxiliary tense, we can use T for them, tense minus okay, modal minus non-finite, because when we have the auxiliary, it's a non-finite sentence, not finite sentence. Okay, the modal plus modal minus non-finite to the infinitive, so plus modal and plus non-finite tense. You can have the past, you can have the present, so you just use plus and minus. Now, to clarify this, we need, okay, this T when we have an auxiliary, okay, or a modal, okay, in the sentence. For example, might and has. So this is the way how we are going to branch it. First, we need to modify the rule of the sentence. We said the sentence or TP includes the NP and the VP. We have to add T in the case of in the case of an auxiliary. Okay, so this is what we have to add, tense. Okay, notice that we are redefining and modifying the rules step by step. So before we talked only about the sentence contains a subject and a predicate. But when we have a sentence with an auxiliary, okay, or a modal or negation or infinitive, etc., then you must add this T. And it's optional. It's optional because sometimes you have finite sentences, okay, with no auxiliaries, okay, and you don't need to have that T. Here is an example. You see now, so when we have auxiliaries, when we have the future, okay, modals, okay, when you have negation, okay, forget about negation for the time being, but let's focus only on tense forms, auxiliary forms, and modal forms, okay? So when you have, for example, must, can, should, ought to, will, was, were, etc. So you have to write them here, okay, under this branch, under this node T, okay, which means tense might. Okay, so this T solves the problem of the auxiliary and the modal, etc. Okay, so this is what is new. So when there is no auxiliary at all, then you need only the NP and the VP. If there is an auxiliary, then you have to add this T. This is the reason why it is optional in the rule, because you don't have auxiliaries or okay tense forms or infinitive form or modals in all sentences. Sometimes you have simple present, for example. I like reading books, for example. So here you don't need T, okay? So you simply write the NP and the VP. Clear? Any question?
Professor,
Yes?
please, I saw some examples of auxiliaries. They link the auxiliary or the modal verb with the VP. Is it correct?
We'll talk about that. Okay? We'll talk about
Okay,
it.
Professor. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the embedded clause, okay, embedded clause. We're not talking about I like reading books. We're talking about embedded clause. For example, I think that you did it, or that you did it surprised me. So these are the embedded clauses, a clause within a clause, the dependent clause. So embedded clauses are often introduced by a complementizer, like I think you know what is a complementizer. The complementizer we have when we have if, whether, for, and that after the verb. Okay, after the verb. For example, he said that. He said whether. Okay, he said if, etc. So when they come after the verb, they function as complementizers. So here is an example. Sean said that he decked the janitor. Now, what do you notice? There is a problem, or we need to modify the rule of the VP. Now, let me see who is, I mean, strictly following or carefully following what we are doing. Which rule we need to modify and why?
So,
Yes, Mr. Yasir?
Sean is a noun phrase, said is the verb phrase, and that he decked the janitor can be seen as a dependent clause that has its own noun phrase and verb phrase.
Yeah, Mr. Yasir, but you didn't, okay, discuss the point I'm expecting. I said
Okay.
which of the rules that we need to modify? Is it the VP, the NP, the adjective phrase, okay, the preposition phrase, the TP, and why? Which one?
Professor,
Mr. Sliman?
here we have to modify the VP because the clause that he decked the janitor is embedded under the VP. So we have to add the complementizer phrase under the VP, the VP.
Okay, very good. So we have to modify the rule of the VP because what do we have here? We have the subject, the NP shown. We have the VP. But what is strange is what we have in the VP. We said last time that in the VP you should have the adverb phrase, the verb, the adverb phrase, okay, the noun phrase, etc. But here we don't have a noun phrase, we don't have an adverb phrase after the verb. What is new here is that we have a clause. We have a complementizer phrase. We have a complementizer phrase after the verb, which means we have to modify the role of the verb phrase. Okay. Another example, that he called me yesterday surprised me. We may have also an embedded clause as the subject. Now, which rule should we modify based on example B?
NP. Should modify NP.
NP? No.
Clause.
No, Ms. Karima. What should we modify?
Maybe the VP?
The VP? No. We should modify the TP, the sentence, because the subject is not an NP here. Okay. So we should modify the TP. The TP, the sentence, does not always contain an NP as its subject and the VP as its predicate. Here, we may find the embedded clause. We may find the clause as the subject of the sentence. So we have to modify the TP rule. So the TP does not always have the NP as its subject. So we may have a clause as the subject of the sentence. Okay, so this is the rule of the complementizer. Please remember it, because if we do not apply this rule, how can you branch this one? So here we have TP, we have the NP, we have the VP, and then we have the verb said. Then what do we have after the verb? What are you going to write after the verb? Are you going to write another VP?
Noun
Another
phrase.
sentence? Noun phrase? No, okay, let's say noun phrase. So noun phrase. Then from the noun phrase, what are you going to branch? The determiner. The determiner he, and what about that? Okay, so you will be stuck.
Clause. Hold the clause, no?
No, this is what if you don't use this tree, this rule, complementizer, you will not be able to branch these two sentences, A and B. It's impossible to branch them, to draw them in a tree if you don't use this rule. So please remember this rule. Whenever you have a complementizer, he said that, I think that, okay, whether we have it or not, whether it is realized or not, for example, I may say, he said we have to do it. So we have that there. We have an embedded clause. So you have to follow this rule. So the complementizer phrase, we have the complementizer, which is optional. Why optional? Because we may have it, as in Sean said that he decked the janitor, or we may omit the complementizer and say Sean said he decked the janitor. We have the embedded clause, but we don't have the complementizer. That's why it is between parentheses. And then we follow it by a sentence, okay, as here. So Sean said that. So when you find an embedded clause, then stop and write down this rule. Complementizer phrase, complementizer, tense phrase or sentence. Why? Because if you remove the complementizer that, then you have a sentence. He decked the janitor. So that's why you have to start with the TP again, because the NP here is he, and the VP decked the janitor. So you will solve the problem. So please remember, whenever you have a complementizer phrase, then you must follow this. Okay? So here the complementizer phrase is the object of the verb said. But what about be? The complementizer phrase is the subject of the sentence, which means that instead of this NP, we are going to write the CP, because the CP can be. So remember, it can be the object of the verb, as in this example, or it could be the subject of the sentence, as in be. Okay, remember this rule, please. CP, C, TP. See that here. Okay, we'll have an example here. Okay. Now embedded clauses as the object of the verb. So this is an object of the verb. Okay. This is an object. Complementizer phrase is complement, is the object of the verb said. Okay. So we'll see two cases. This case where the embedded clause is the object of the verb, and the other case, which is in B, the example B. So it functions as the subject of the sentence. Okay, look at this example. So Sean said that he decked the janitor. So after the verb, we have an embedded clause. Then you stop and you write this rule: CP, C, TP. You must follow this rule of the embedded clause. Then you have that here. Okay, that. Then the TP means you have to start again with a sentence like this one, TP. It's like we have two clauses, and indeed we have two clauses. We can show this in syntax, that we have the main clause and we have the embedded clause. Okay, TP, NP, VP, shown, said, etc. The VP, the verb, takes another clause, embedded clause, as its complement. So then we have to write the rule CP, C, TP. Then you continue. TP, we have the NP, he, and we have the VP, decked. Okay? And then we have the NP, the janitor, etc. Is it clear? Any question?
It's clear, Professor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Clear, Professor. Thank you.
Okay, now we move to the second case. What is it? What is the second case?
When the embedded is
Subject.
Yeah, the embedded clause as the subject, which means instead of this NP as the subject, we will have CP as the subject. Okay, so another example, then we move to NP as the subject. Another example, Naomi asked Taryn if, so if is a complementizer. So when you have that, if, whether, or, okay, so Naomi asked Erin if, then ate her compote chicken yesterday over the phone. Okay, so here the subject is the NP, the noun Naomi. The VP, we have only one lexical category, which is the verb. This is phrasal, 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 phrasal. Okay, so the verb takes its complement, Erin, the NP. Now, what is new here is that asks Erin if, then ate her. So this is the verb ask takes two complements. Okay, takes the NP Erin as the first complement, and the clause, the complementizer phrase, as another complement. Okay, so you have to do the same thing if you have a reduced clause. For example, I asked John, who called me yesterday? So how are you going to branch this clause, who called me yesterday? So you have to use the complementizer phrase again. Okay, so you have to use this rule. Okay, so the complementizer, we have the complementizer C is if, because the sentence here we have if, then the TP. TP, we have the NP, then the VP. 8, within the VP, we have the NP as its complement. Okay, her compote chicken. Adjective is always branched first as an adjective phrase. And then we have the adverb phrase yesterday. And then we have the preposition phrase over the phone. Okay, now if the complementizer is not realized, you may indicate it in the tree with an empty category, or you simply delete the C category. Okay, which means you have two options. If we have an example like, I said you should do it. Normally we have that, but it is not phonologically and morphologically and syntactically realized. It's empty. So we have to indicate it in the tree in one of the ways, the following ways. So, for example, Sean said he picked the janitor. We know that there is an embedded clause, but we don't have that. This does not mean that we don't have an embedded clause. Okay, so you have two options. Okay, so first TP shown in P and the VP said. So said, here we have a complementizer phrase. He picked the janitor. So the CP, so either you delete the complementizer here and you continue, or you write it with an empty category. Look at this one, or empty. It means that we have a complementizer phrase, we have an embedded clause, but we don't have that. Okay, this is the meaning. That's the complementizer, the head, the complementizer itself is not realized. So you may write it as this one, empty, with an empty category, or you may delete this complementizer. So both of them are accepted. Is it clear?
Yes, Professor.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Professor.
Now, since a verb may take a clause as its object instead of an NP, the rule of VP must be modified. Okay, you see what is new here? So this is the old rule of the VP. We said the VP contains an obligatory head, the verb, preceded by an adverb phrase, followed by maximally two NPs. This is the case of ditransitive verbs. They cannot have more than two complements. Then another adverb phrase, then preposition phrase, okay? Adverb phrase, etc. Because the rule of adjunct is repeated as, okay, as much as you can. So this rule should be modified. Now, how should we modify it? Yes, please.
By added a CP
Where?
after the verb, be the head.
Yes, yes. So after the verb, we should add the CP here. Why? Because the verb may take the NP as its complement or object, or a CP as its complement. So you can't have both of them. You must have only one. A verb may take the NP as its complement or a complementizer phrase. Okay? So the NP, that's why you have a slash here, which means or. You can't have both of them. Okay? So the VP takes an NP and another MP or a CP. For example, John said that. So here we have CP. Or John, okay, called me. So here we have an NP. So sometimes you have an NP as the complement of the verb. Sometimes you have the embedded clause, the CP complementizer phrase, as the complement of the verb. So we have to modify the rule. Is it clear? So this is the final refined rule of the verb phrase. Okay? Now we move to the embedded clauses in the subject position. In the subject position. There is an example that he called me yesterday, surprised me. This is a correct sentence. So this means that we do not always find a noun phrase in the subject. Sometimes we find a clause functioning as the subject of the sentence. This means that we have to modify the rule of the sentence. We should say that the sentence does not always begin with a noun phrase as the subject. It may begin with a clause as the subject. So this is what we are going to do. Another example, that he decked the janitor worried Jeff. This means we have to modify the rule of the sentence, TP, especially its subject. How again? So we are going to say or to project the subject by writing down that in the subject you may have NP as the subject or CP as the subject. So the same thing here. Okay, so in the sentence, in the TP, the sentence, you may have the NP or the CP as the subject, not only the NP. So the old one, we had only the NP, T, and the VP. Okay? Is it clear? So this means that in the subject, you may have a noun phrase or you may have a clause, nominal clause. Okay, complementizer. In syntax, we say it's a complementizer phrase. Any question? Yes, please. Any question? Is it clear?
Yes,
it's clear,
Professor.
Professor.
Yes, that's clear.
So please remember these two rules, the one of the VP and the one of the TP. Here is an example. That he decked the janitor worried me, or that he called me surprised me. Okay, so here the sentence, the TP, has the subject a complementizer, not a noun phrase. Okay, so the CP. Remember, whenever you have an embedded clause, okay, which could be as the subject or the object, for the time being. So you have to write down this rule: complementizer phrase, complementizer, and TP. Okay? CP, complementizer phrase. Now we have seen two cases. The first one, the complementizer phrase as the complement of the verb, the object of the verb. He said that, etc. The second case, the complementizer phrase as the subject of the sentence. For example, that he called me yesterday surprised everyone. Now, the third case is that a complementizer phrase may modify the NP. Okay, so complementizer phrase as a modifier to NP. The fact about Bill that he likes ice cream bothers Natasha. Now we notice here that the complementizer phrase modifies the noun Bill. The fact about Bill that he likes ice cream. Okay, so this is the third case. Okay, when the complementizer phrase modifies the noun. This means that from the NP we are going to have the CP. So again, this is the TP. Okay. And by the way, what is the subject of this sentence?
Sir?
Yes?
The fact about Bill that he likes ice cream is the subject.
Yes, which means that we have the embedded clause within the subject. Within the subject. The verb phrase is clear. The verb phrase is bothers Natasha. Now, how are we going to branch the first one first? The fact about Bill that he likes, etc. So we have the noun phrase, the determiner, the noun, the head, fact, and the preposition phrase about Bill, about the fact about Bill. Okay, about Bill is the preposition phrase. Now, that he likes ice cream modifies this noun phrase, fact, modifies specifically fact, not Bill. So, because if it modifies Bill, then it must be branched from this NP, from this one. Okay, from this one. So it doesn't modify Bill, it modifies fact. So the fact about Bill that he likes, so we can say the fact that, so that he likes ice cream modifies fact. So this is an embedded clause, so we have to follow the rule. Complementizer phrase, complementizer, TP. Then we have that he likes ice cream. Is it clear? So this is an example of a complementizer phrase that modifies the noun. So please remember these three cases. The complementizer phrase can be the complement of the verb or the object of the verb, can be the subject of the sentence, and can be a modifier to the noun phrases.
Sir?
Any questions? Yes?
Sir? That's why, sorry to interrupt you, that's why we didn't put it in the same level as MP and VP. Yes, we branched it after MP because he modified the fact about Bell. That's why we put it in this level.
So the subject is NP. What is the NP? The NP is the whole thing. The NP is the fact about Bill that he likes ice cream. This is a noun phrase. The fact about Bill that he likes ice cream. The whole thing, we can see it here. This Note, NP includes the facts about Bill that he likes ice cream. All of them are branched from the NP, which means that the subject is the NP. But the embedded clause, this complementizer, is within the NP, is included within the NP. Okay? That's why it's not at the same level with the verb phrase, but it is included within the noun phrase because it's not the subject. The complementizer phrase is embedded within the NP because it modifies only that. Okay?
Yes, thank you. It's clear now.
So this means that the rule of the NP should be modified again. Because look at the NP here. Look at the NP. The NP has determiner, has noun, has preposition phrase. This is what we saw before. But what is new here is that the noun phrase may also take a CP as a modifier, the complementizer phrase as a modifier. So we have to add it here. This is the rule that we saw last time. The noun phrase contains determiner optional, adjective phrase optional, and the preposition phrase optional. This is the rule we talked about last time. But today, something is new. Okay, the noun phrase may take the complementizer phrase as a modifier. We have to add it here. We have to add it. Okay, so we add it here. CP, complementizer phrase. So the noun phrase may also take complementizer phrase as a modifier. So please remember, this is the final rule of the noun phrase. So we are modifying rules. We modified the rule of the verb phrase. We modified the rule of the TP, the sentence. Now we have modified the rule of the NP.
Sir, can
Yes?
I ask a question?
Yes.
What if we have two CPs within the same noun phrase?
Yes. Yes. For
How can we
example.
draw it in a tree? An example,
Yeah.
okay. For example,
mhm.
the fact about Bill that he likes ice cream, that he might kill for it, bothers Natasha, for example.
Yes. So the second CP also modifies back. Okay. Repeat the sentence, please.
The fact about Bill that he likes ice cream, that he might kill for it, bothers Natasha.
Okay, that he might kill for it should be branched from the NP. Another CP here, you see? Do you see the cursor? I'm
Next
moving
to
this
it.
okay. Next to it from the NP.
Okay.
And next to it here's CP. And go ahead again, CP, complementizer, CP, etc.
Okay, thank you.
And let me give you another example. Another example, we may have a CP within a CP. For example, the fact about Bill that he likes ice cream, now here, that is rotten, for example, or that is expensive, for example. So here, that is expensive, or that should be expensive, etc., modifies only this NP, which means we should have a CP from this NP. Okay? You got the point?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, Professor,
Sir?
because the ice cream is expensive. It modifies the ice cream.
Yes, that, for example, ice cream, that people say it's expensive. So this is a CP that should be branched from the NP, not from fact. So it depends on what modifies what. Yes, please?
Sir?
Yes, Professor. Even the first suggestion that she said that he may kill for it, it modifies the noun phrase ice cream. It should not be branched from the noun NP that is branched from the TP.
No. It modifies fact. The fact about Bill that he likes ice cream, that he might kill for it.
He may kill for what?
It,
The fact or ice cream? He may kill for the ice cream.
it, that it which refers to ice cream. Okay? Okay? Only it which modifies or refers back to ice cream. Okay?
Sir?
So we'll talk further about the modifiers. So that he might kill for it. There's nothing about ice cream, but it says about the fact. Okay? It should modify ice cream if we say something about ice cream. For example, it's expensive. Okay? It's near. It's okay. If you say something that describes ice cream. Okay, that's another
Yes,
issue in
Professor.
terms of modification. Yes, Mr. Haytham?
Sir, so that being the case, I think we need to apply the recursivity rule to it. We need to add like a plus sign next to the CP. If we can have a lot of CPs within the same sentence.
Yes, you may add it here. Yeah. Yes, I agree with you. Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, so now we move to coordination. Now, if you have coordination, how can you branch a sentence? For example, I like John and Annie. How are you going to branch John and Annie? Okay, so when you have coordination in between nouns, between prepositions, between verbs, etc., this is what we are going to see how we can branch, okay, words or phrases with conjunctions. So two elements with identical categories that are joined together with words like and, or, ban, etc. So here are some examples: the blue and red station wagon. So here we have conjunction between adjective phrases. I saw these dancers and those musicians. We have coordination between two noun phrases. And here we have coordination between two verb phrases. And in D, we have coordination between two sentences. And in E, we have coordination between two prepositional phrases. We went through the woods and over the bridge. Okay, so we are going to generate a rule that applies to all of them. Okay, so notice that coordination seems to be able to join together identical categories and create a new identical category out of them. And by the way, we can conjoin only elements that belong to the same syntactic category. You cannot conjoin, for example, a verb and a determiner. Okay. So to generate these structures, we may need two rules. One to conjoin phrases, for example, the man and the woman, and one to conjoin words, the dancer and singer. Which means that we need one rule for the XP and one rule for the X. One for the lexical category and one for the phrasal category. So these are the two rules. So please remember, when you have the conjunction, this is the rule: XP, XP, conjunction, XP. Or when you have only lexical categories, X, X, conjunction, X. Of course, we said last time, avoid having two lexical categories. So with the exception, I said it last time, but you didn't pay attention to it, but now I'm going to explain it. Okay, avoid having two lexical categories in a phrase. I'm not talking about a phrase, but talking about branching a phrase at the top level. So if you have conjunction between two words, for example, blue and red, so you can write adjective, 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 conjunction. This is the only way that can help you branch this phrase. Or you can write here, or you can write why here, adjective, adjective, adjective. Of course, it's problematic because we don't know which one is the head. That's why, and this is something we're not going to cover, some syntacticians claim that it's the conjunction that should head this phrase. We should say the conjunction phrase, not the adjective phrase. Okay, when we are talking about conjunction between two adjectives. Okay, so please, when you have conjunction, for example, between two noun phrases, these dancers and those musicians, remember this rule. You should have the NP here, the NP, and the conjunction. I repeat, whenever you have conjunction, you should have NP, conjunction, NP. If you have conjunction between VP, then it's very easy. You should have VP, conjunction, VP. If you have conjunction between two preposition phrases, the same thing. Preposition phrase, conjunction. Preposition phrase, preposition phrase. Okay, it's very easy. This is the meaning of X. Okay, XP, conjunction, XP. X can be replaced by any category. You replace it with noun, adjective, etc. But X, okay, only when you have only words. When you have only words, for example, blue and red. When you have conjunction between lexical categories. Okay, for example, he speaks and writes. So here, speaks and writes, so you should have verb, conjunction, verb. But if you have verb phrases, adjective phrases, noun phrases, then you have to follow rule B. Okay, here is another example. The verb phrase, so drinking lemonade, eating brownies. So the VP conjunction, VP, okay? VP, conjunction, VP. And then you continue. In the VP, we have the verb and noun phrase. In the VP, we have the verb and the noun phrase. Of course, I said last time, avoid having two phrasal categories. Avoid having a phrase that has no head. This is problematic. We'll talk about it in expert theory. Okay, we'll talk about the problem that this phrase has no head. Okay, we'll modify this. So, but what you have to remember is this: when you have a conjunction between two words, follow this rule. If we have, for example, man and woman, then noun, conjunction, noun. But if you have the man and the woman, then okay, you should have NP, conjunction, NP. But in my opinion, if you write, okay, here adjective phrase, I will accept it because a word is a phrase indeed.
Professor.
Any question? Yes?
Professor, may I ask a question?
One by one, yes. Nordin?
Okay, thank you so much. What about the sentences which contain ambiguity? Should we draw the two?
We are going to talk about this. Please don't jump, Mr. Nordin.
Thank you.
We'll talk about this. Khadija, ask me about what we are doing now.
Yes, Professor, I'm going to ask you about the example A. For the, should we have at the top of the tree adjective phrase or adjective in A?
I answered this question, okay? I said we have two lexical categories, two words. If you have conjunction between two words, you can use only adjective, okay? But if you use adjective phrase, I will accept it because a word is a phrase in itself. Because we are going to modify this in expert theory. Okay, you just need to be, you just need to understand and be patient. Okay, because what we are doing now, I said it last time, what we are doing now is to some extent wrong. We'll modify it. Okay, but remember, okay, the rules we're talking about now. Now, the sentence, for example, if you have two sentences, for example, I have lost my wallet, or I have lost my mind. Please remember, if you have a link between two sentences, if you use conjunctions or, and, but, etc., then this is the only way to bridge it. Use TP 2 times. So, because we have two sentences, the idea is very simple. Because here we have two verb phrases, so we conjoin them. Verb phrase, and they are conjoined. Okay? We have two sentences, we conjoin them. So TP, the head, the mother of the two sentences, the mother of the two sentences, and then every sentence has mother. And this is like if you say the mother of the mothers. Okay, this is the mother of this sentence. This is the mother of this sentence. And this is their grandmother. Okay, so this is the first sentence, and this is the second sentence. They are conjoined, okay, with or. Then TP, we have the NP is the subject. I remember, if you have auxiliaries, modals, tenses, etc., then write them under T, okay? Then the VP, okay? The verb takes the NP as its complement, my wallet, okay? Then the same thing here, okay? We may have conjunction between prepositional phrases, for example, through the words and over the bridge, okay? So we have two prepositional phrases that are conjoined by and. The first preposition phrase through the word, so through the preposition takes the NP as its complement, and the same thing here, over the bridge. Remember, this is a rule. The preposition always takes the NP as its complement. Okay. Any question? So please remember this rule. Now we move to the summary. These are the PS rules, phrase structure rules we have covered. We talked about the rule of the complementizer phrase, complementizer. This is the rule. Whenever you have an embedded clause, you have to follow this rule. This is the modified rule of the sentence. So the sentence TP may have the NP as its subject or the complementizer phrase. And the tense, this T, we need it when we have auxiliaries, modals, etc. Then the VP. We modified the rule of the VP. We said in the VP, the verb may take the NP as complement or the CP as the complement. The NP, we also modified the rule of the NP. We said we may also have the complementizer phrase modifying the noun. The PP, we didn't modify these rules, but this is what is interesting. Sorry, if we have conjunction between phrases, the noun phrases, for example, then NP, conjunction NP, and the mother is NP. If you have conjunction between only words, not phrases, then you can write noun, noun, conjunction, noun. Okay. Now we move to an example that summarizes all these rules. Okay. We may do it together, maybe. Okay, so we leave practice for next time for an extra session. We can practice drawing trees. Okay. So this is a sentence. The big man from NY has often said that he gave peanuts to elephants. Okay. So here we have the TP, and we have the subject. The subject is the big man from NY. So this is an NP. The determiner is the adjective phrase big, then the head man, the preposition phrase from NY. NY is a noun phrase. When you have numbers, letters, etc., they are noun phrases. For example, 25. Okay, it's a number, so it's a noun phrase indeed. Okay, so tense here we have it because we have, okay, has often said we have present perfect. So under tense we may write as, or we may write plus present plus perfect. Okay, plus tense plus present plus perfect, because this is conjugated in the present perfect. So we may use, okay, brackets here, brackets, and we write plus tense because it is conjugated, plus simple, plus perfect, plus present, plus perfect. Okay, or you simply write has. Then the VP, the adverb phrase precedes the verb, adverb phrase. Then the verb takes as its complement the CP that gave peanuts to elephants. So the CP is the complement of the verb that. What do we have in the CP? Remember the rule. Whenever you have CP, you have to write it. You have to write this rule. C and TP. C, we have that. TP, again, what is the rule of TP? TP, you have the noun phrase and the VP. So the noun phrase is he, the VP, we have the verb gave, we have the NP peanut, and we have the PP to elephants. So the preposition phrase to elephants does not modify the NP, it modifies the verb give. We know this because first, to elephants says nothing about peanut, just from the meaning. Okay, and importantly, we know that the preposition phrase to elephants must be branch, must belong to the VP because of the nature of the verb give. The verb give is a ditransitive verb. It must require two complements. Okay? Clear? Is it clear? Any questions?
Yes, it's clear.
Professor, clear.
Okay.
Yes, it's clear.
So we move to how to draw a tree. This is very simple. We go over it quickly. How to draw a tree. There are two ways. Okay, you may start with okay, top down or from the bottom, from bottom up way. Okay, so there are actually two ways to go about drawing a tree. You can start at the bottom and work your way up to the TP, or you can start with the TP and work your way down. So it depends on you. So this is very simple because it's I'm just going to show you how to draw a tree, whether you start from the top or from the bottom. It depends on which way is easier to you. Now let's start with the bottom up, from the bottom to the top, which is the TP. So write out the sentence and identify the parts of speech. This is the first thing you should do. The very small boy kissed the platypus. So determiner, adverb, adjective, noun, verb, determiner, noun. You start with the parts of speech, the lexical categories. Then identify what modifies what. If the word modifies something, then it is contained in the same constituent. Okay, then start linking together items that modify one another. Which one modifies the other? Okay, so here D goes with platypus. So they form the INPI, noun phrase. Very, we have adjective, very, adverb phrase, and it modifies small, the adjective phrase. Okay? Very modifies small, determiner here modifies the noun. Then you move to bigger constituents. Okay? Then we have determiner modifies the INP, which is the very small boy. Okay? Determiner modifies the noun. Then you move to this one, the verb. Okay? It takes as its complement the INP. So you have to branch them here, the VP. Then you move to the biggest constituent, which is TP. So here we stopped from the bottom towards the top. Okay, we'll see the other one. This is usually used by beginners, followed by beginners, but it depends on your personal experience. Finally, check your trees against the rules that generated. Check, this is very interesting. Check your trees against the rules that generate them. Against the rules, which means, what did we say before? We said the TP contains the NP and the VP. Okay, so this is what we talked about. What about the NP? The NP contains determiner, adjective phrase, and noun. Fine, it respects the rules that we talked about. The VP contains the verb and the NP. The verb takes only one object. It has one object, which is the NP. Fine. The NP contains determiner and noun. Fine. Adjective phrase contains the adverb phrase and the adjective. Fine. Okay, this is what you have to do. You have to check the tree that you if you have it in the exam. For example, when you draw a tree, so when you finish, you have to check it against the rules that you already know. Okay, so avoid. Okay, this is correct and this is incorrect. Avoid having a line under the lexical category. Don't do this, okay? You shouldn't have a line under lexical categories. Lexical categories, then write the words. You don't need to have a line here. Okay? Now we start with the other method, top down, from the top towards the lexical categories. So this method starts out the same way, writes out the sentences and identify the parts of speech. So these are the parts of speech. The very small boy kissed the platypus. Next, draw the TP node. We start with the TP. We start with the mother. We start with the top, okay, node, which is the TP. So in a sentence, we have noun phrase and we have the verb phrase, okay? Then you move to the NP. You finish the subject first, then move to the VP. So here we have the NP, determiner. It's like we move from larger constituents to smaller constituents. But in the other way, we move from smaller constituents to larger constituents. Okay? So the NP, and we have the determiner, adjective, phrase, and noun. Okay, then we move to embedded constituents. Adjective phrase, we have adverb phrase, adverb, adjective. We finish the subject and we move to the verb phrase. Okay, the verb phrase, we have the verb, and within the verb we have the NP as its complement. Okay, now it depends which way you start with is a matter of practice. Now we move to the bracketed diagrams. Bracketed diagrams, okay? Drawing bracketed diagrams essentially follows the same principles as tree drawing. So here we have the NP. This is the NP, the mother. It's the large constituent here. Then we have determiner, and we have noun, man. Bracketed diagram. Every constituent must be bracketed. So Here's an example. The very small boy is the platypus. So first mark the past of speech. This is determiner. So enclose the brackets. The brackets here. Adverb, adjective, noun, verb, determiner, noun. This is the first thing you should do. Okay? Parts of speech. Next, move to the phrases. Adjective phrase, adverb phrase, noun phrase, preposition phrase. Okay? So where are the phrases here? Very is an adverb phrase. Okay? We go step by step. Okay? Then we have above the adverb phrase, we have the adjective phrase. So the adverb phrase is only very. Only very. That's why we have the brackets from here to here. Only very. But the adjective phrase from very, from here to here. Okay? From very small is the adjective phrase. We add one here. Okay? Adjective phrase. Then we have the noun phrase. So you see, we are moving from smaller constituents to larger constituents. The very small boy is the noun phrase. Then we move to the verb phrase, and within the verb phrase, we have a noun phrase, which is the platypus. Okay, so here is the noun phrase. Okay, so we add bracketed diagrams here. Then, okay, the VP. Okay, the rule. This is the VP. Okay, we move to the VP, kiss the platypus. Now we are left only with the rule of the sentence, TP, which includes everything. Okay, so here it is, TP, this one, this bracket, and we enclose it here. So this first bracket is for this noun. The second one is for the NP, the platypus. The third one is for the VP, kiss the platypus. And the last one is for the whole sentence for the TP. Okay. Again, look at these two. So brackets. So this bracket is for boy, for the noun, and the second one for the noun phrase, the very small boy. Now let's talk about these two brackets here. One for very, adverb, and one for the adverb phrase, because very alone is an adverb and an adverb phrase. It's the head of its own phrase. Is it clear?
Yes, Professor.
Yes, sir.
Now ambiguity. Mr. Nordin, now we talk about modification and ambiguity. We're going to talk about syntactic ambiguity, not semantic ambiguity. Semantic ambiguity is not usually solved by syntax. Semantic ambiguity with one word has different meanings, but in syntax, we do not show the difference in meaning and we project it by two different trees, but we can do this to solve the syntactic ambiguity. Syntactic ambiguity means we don't know or we have more than one possibility. A phrase or a word may modify this or that. This is the syntactic ambiguity. What modifies what? It's about what modifies what. Okay? One word or one phrase can modify another phrase or two phrases. Okay? So syntactic trees allow us to capture ambiguous sentences. There is an example: the man killed the king with the knife. Now, how can we show? Of course, by the way, you will have ambiguity in the exam. So how can we show ambiguity, okay, using the tree structure? So ambiguity means that we have two readings, two interpretations. So you have to have two trees, okay? So, and you have to explain the meaning, okay? So in the first meaning, the prepositional phrase with the knife. So the problem here is that the man killed the king with the knife. So the ambiguity is, did he kill him with a knife? So in this case, with a knife modifies the verb kill, or he killed the man who had a knife. He was killed although he had a knife. So the man killed the king with the knife. So who had the knife? Is it the king, or he killed the king with a knife? So to solve this ambiguity in syntax, we are going to branch this preposition phrase with the knife in the first time from the verb kill, which means that he killed him using a knife, and in the second tree from the noun the king, which means that he killed the king who had a knife. Okay, so let's focus on the first meaning. The preposition phrase with the knife modifies kill. Okay, so this is the tree, the 2p, the sentence. We have the NP, the man, and we have the VP, the predicate, the VP. We have the verb killed. We have the NP, the king, and we have the preposition phrase. Now, ambiguity lies in the preposition phrase within the knife. So this is the first interpretation. The preposition phrase modifies the verb. How do we know? Because it belongs to the VP. We branch it from the VP. So from this tree, I understand that he killed him using a knife. So in the exam, you have to give me the first meaning. Okay, you have to say that in the first meaning, the preposition phrase or the noun phrase or whatever modifies the verb, which means that he killed him using a knife. Okay, you have also to give the meaning and you have to show it in the tree. Okay, now let's look at the second interpretation, which means that the king had a knife, however, he was killed. Okay, so the second interpretation, the king with the knife was killed by the man who used a gun, for example. So the preposition phrase with the knife modifies king and thus attached to NP. You see the difference now? So the preposition phrase belongs to the NP because it is the king who had a knife. Okay? The preposition phrase is branched from the NP because it modifies the king. This means that the king had a knife, however, he was killed. We don't know whether he killed him using a gun or whatever. Okay, now compare it to the previous one. Look at this one. The preposition phrase belongs to the VP, is branched from the VP, which means that he killed him using a knife. The second one is branched from the NP, not from this VP. It means that the king had a knife. Any question? Is it clear? You will have it in the
Yes,
exam.
it's very clear.
Yes, it's clear. Yes.
Okay. And one more thing to say about ambiguity is that ambiguity always lies in the adjuncts. Okay, so if you are looking for ambiguity, pay attention to the adjuncts, not the complement. Okay, adjunct, which means preposition phrases and adverb phrases. Most of the time, you will find ambiguity in preposition phrases and adverb phrases. Okay, and noun phrases if they are adjunct. Okay, please remember ambiguity often lies in the adjunct. Now we move to constituency test, and this is very interesting part. Let me ask you a question. How do you know that a phrase is a phrase? How do you know that a noun phrase is the very small, for example, the very small boy? How do we know that this is a phrase? There are some tests, okay, that we use to know whether a group of words forms a phrase, a constituent or not. So there are, yes, Mr. Omar?
There is a test of the stand-alone test.
The only thing
It
you
means
remember, stand alone?
if a group of words can stand alone as an answer to a question, they form a constituent.
Yes, so we are going to focus on 4 tests: replacement test, standalone test, movement test, and coordination test. You will have them in the exam, so pay attention. Okay, so replacement test. If you can replace a group of words with a single word, then we know that group forms the constituent. For example, as I told you before, I met a very small boy yesterday. Can we replace a very small boy yesterday with a pronoun, or only a very small boy? Which one can be replaced?
Just a very small boy, but
Yes.
I
So
met him yesterday.
yeah.
You can say
So
I
yeah.
met yesterday.
So, oh yeah. So when I say I met him yesterday, so only a very small boy can be replaced by the pronoun him, but not yesterday. So because of this test, replacement test, so we conclude that only a very small boy alone forms a constituent, and the adverb phrase forms a constituent alone. For example, we can replace yesterday with there, with tomorrow, with any other possible adverb. So this is the first test, replacement test. So in the exam, I will give you, for example, a sentence and underline. I will underline a group of words and ask you, does it form a constituent? Or I will give you a phrase underlined and I will ask you which underlined group of words, form a constituent. So you have to apply the test. You have to say, according to replacement test, we cannot replace this underlined phrase by, with a noun or a pronoun, etc. Okay, so it doesn't form a constituent. If it can be replaced, it means it forms a constituent. Okay, so if you can replace a group of words with a single word, then we know that group forms a constituent. Here is an example. The man from Morocco, the man from NY, flew only ultralight planes. So the man from NY can be replaced with he. This means that the man from NY is a constituent, is a noun phrase. Okay? Now the second test is stand-alone test, sometimes called sentence fragment test. Sentence fragment test. So if the words can stand alone in response to a question, then they probably constitute a constituent. Okay? For example, I bought a book yesterday. I bought a book yesterday. So the question is, what did you do yesterday? Bought a book yesterday, or bought a book. Okay. What did you do? Bought a book yesterday. So bought a book yesterday can stand alone. So it forms a constituent. Can stand alone as an answer to a question. So this means that bought a book yesterday is a constituent. And indeed it is, because it's the verb phrase. constituent means it's a phrase. Okay, here's an example. If we ask the question, what did Paul do yesterday? We can only use the first phrase as answer and not the second one. What did Paul do yesterday? Ate at a really fancy restaurant. We cannot say ate at. So in the exam, I will, for example, underline ate at and ate at a really fancy restaurant and ask you which one is not a constituent. So you should say the first one is a constituent because according to standalone test, this phrase alone can stand as an answer to this question. And you have to think of the question. For example, what did Paul do yesterday? So we can say ate at a really fancy restaurant. So we can use this alone. It can stand alone as an answer to this question. But we cannot answer this question, what did Paul do yesterday? We cannot say ate at. This means that ate at does not form a constituent. And indeed, we already know it because ate at is not a verb phrase. The verb phrase is ate at a really fancy restaurant. Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, now we move to
Professor?
movement. Yes? Yes.
Sorry. In the replacement test, words such as do can also take the place of the entire predicate.
Words such as do? Is this what you said?
Do, yes. For example, the professor found a pen. Words such as do can also take the place of the entire predicate. Found a pen. As in the professor found, a pen, and the teacher did too.
She did too, yes. Mr. Umar, you are making a difference between the adjunct and the complements by using do so replacement from X-bar theory. Let's not talk about it now. Okay, I have a certain methodology. Okay, I don't explain two difficulties at the same time. You are right, but I don't want to talk about it now. We'll talk about, okay, do so replacement test and did so replacement test and so replacement test in X-bar theory to claim that there exists an intermediate category between the phrasal and the lexical category. Let's not talk about it now. Okay, so
Okay, thank you,
we
Professor.
move to the movement test. If you can move a group of words around in a sentence, then they form a constituent because you can move them as a unit. Okay, and remember, only constituents can be moved from one position to another. So movement test includes the following. Okay, there are types of movement. Clefting means putting a string, a group of words between it was or it is and that at the beginning of the sentence. For example, it was a brand new car that he bought. Suppose in the exam I ask you whether a brand new car forms a constituent or not, and you want to use the movement test, specifically Clefting, and you say, according to the movement test, especially Clefting, a brand new car forms a constituent because using Clefting we can start a sentence with it was or it is. It was if the sentence is in the past. It is if the sentence is in the present. So we can say, we can move a brand new car and use it was or it is at the same time. So it was a brand new car that he bought. So we can move a brand new car and we can put it at the beginning of the sentence after it is or it was. And the sentence is still correct. So this means that a brand new car is a constituent. And indeed it is, because it's a noun phrase. Okay, let's take another example. Can you apply Cleftin to this sentence? I met him yesterday. Does him form a constituent? Can anyone use Cleftin to prove whether it is a constituent or not? I met him yesterday. Him, I'm talking about him. Yes,
Professor. Professor.
Mr. Yasin, yes?
Okay.
Yes?
Can I answer, sir?
Can I?
Mr. Yasin, go ahead.
It was him that I met yesterday.
Yes, so we can use Clifton, we can move him, and the sentence is correct. So it forms a constituent. So we can say it was him that I met yesterday, but we cannot move him yesterday. So using Clifton, we cannot say it was him yesterday that I met. So because we cannot use Clifton, we cannot use movement test, so him yesterday does not form a constituent. I am showing you the way how to answer in the exam. Okay? So, proposing another type of movement test is also called pseudo-clefting. Involves putting the string group of words before is or are what or is or are who at the front of the sentence. So it is similar to clefting. The only difference is that in clefting we say it was or it is that, and in proposing we say is or are what or who. Here is an example. I like big bowls of beans. I like big bowls of beans. Suppose that in the exam I ask you whether big bowls of beans is a constituent or not, and you want to use proposing as a test. So you say you have to begin with big bowls of beans, and because we have the plural, use are, what or who. Okay, are or is, what or who. You have to start with that group of words that you want to check whether it forms a constituent or not. So we say, big bowls of beans are what I like, and the sentence is correct. So since we can move big bowls of beans from one position from the final position to the initial position, and followed by are what, and the sentence is correct, means that it forms a constituent. Is it clear? So the difference between clefting and proposing, here we use it was, it is, that. Here we use is or are, what or who. Passive is also included within movement test. Involves putting the object in the subject position. For example, okay, the slop ring dog kissed the big boy. Suppose that I ask you whether the big boy is a constituent or not. So you should move it. Use the passive voice. Can we use it in the passive voice? Yes. We can say the big boy was kissed by. So this means that since you can move the big boy from this position, from the object position to the subject position, it means that it forms a constituent. Okay, so we have 4 tests. The last one is coordination. Coordination, okay? So the last one is coordination. If you can conjoin, coordinate 2 elements, 2 phrases, 2 words, it means that they form a constituent. We cannot, for example, say de and go, which means that determiners and verbs can never form a constituent. But we can say the man and the woman, we can conjoin them, it means they form a constituent. Okay? Here is an example. John and the man went to the store. We can join John and the man, so they form a constituent. But we cannot say John and very blue. Okay? Suppose that in the exam I underline John very blue and I ask you, does it form a constituent? So you can simply say we cannot conjoin them, so they don't form a constituent. So when constituency tests fail, so first in the exam I may specify, I may say according to Clifton, does this group of words form a constituent or not? Or I may ask you generally, use one of the constituency tests and justify or prove whether the underlined words form a constituent or not. Now, when constituency tests fail, sometimes you apply a certain test and it doesn't give you the answer. Okay? Consider the case of the subject of a sentence and its verb. Okay? Would we have, for example, the subject of a sentence and its verb? So these do not form a constituent, however, under certain circumstances. Look at this example. Bruce loved and Kelly hated phonology class. So the subject and the verb, they are conjoined with and. So you may say, according to coordination test, they form a constituent. However, they do not form a constituent. Okay? Because under certain circumstances, you can conjoin subject and the verb to the exclusion of the object. So here, Bruce loved and Kelly hated. So here, we know that they don't form a constituent because the subject and the verb here and the verb and the object, hated. So phonology class must go with the verb because phonology class is the complement of the 2 verbs, hate and love. So phonology class must go with hate and love. So they don't form a constituent. However, we can use a coordination. So you have to, in this case, you have to use more than one test to make sure that they form a constituent. Okay? So this sentence seems to indicate that the verb and the subject form a constituent because they are conjoined with and. However, they don't. So for this reason, you have to try more than one test. Okay? Sometimes you know whether a group of words forms a constituent or not. You just need to know whether it's an adjective phrase, a preposition phrase, a noun phrase, etc. But sometimes it's tricky when you are given a kind of a preposition phrase and you are asked whether it goes with that noun or not. Okay? So you have to try more than one test if it's problematic. Okay? Now, constituency in other languages. Languages vary from one another with respect to phrase structure. There are also languages that have no phrase structure at all, as well as languages with very free word order. So we're going to compare between English and some other languages, okay? And we'll notice that languages are different in terms of word order. This is something that you know. Word order, languages are not the same. And also, this automatically means that the position of the head must be different. Okay. In some languages, you find the head on the right. In other languages, you find it on the left. Okay. So the head of a phrase is the word that gives it category to the phrase. English often tends toward having the head of phrases on the left of phrases. So English is left-headed. Please remember this. English is left-headed, which means that the head is usually on the left of the phrase. Okay. For example, in verb phrases, the verb is on the left. Preposition phrases, the head is on the left. Okay. But in other categories, it's not on the left. So it's usually on the left. On the other hand, there are many languages where the predominant order has heads on the right. Some languages have heads on the right, so they are called right-headed. The position of the preposition as the head of its phrase. Now let's take the preposition as an example. So the preposition in English is it on the right or on the left in a preposition
It's on the
phrase?
left.
On the left. So it's the best example because we said English is left-headed. Let's take the preposition as an example. So we know that it's left-headed in English. What about other languages? An example from Lesbian, prepositions come after their noun phrase. So you see, it's a preposition phrase. Okay, it's a preposition phrase, but strangely enough, the noun comes first. Okay, you see, it's a preposition phrase, but the noun comes first, which means if you don't know that in this language, the preposition, which is, if you don't know that it is right-headed, you will mistakenly say that this is a noun phrase. Doctors do. This is not, okay? This is not a noun phrase, okay? This is not a noun phrase because we know that the head is always on the right. Okay? So the head preposition follows the NP rather than preceding it as shown in the phrase structure rule. Okay? So this is the opposite of the preposition rule in English. In English, the preposition first, then the NP as the complement. In this language, the NP complement is the first one. Why are we talking about this? Because in the exam, I may give you a sentence from another language that you don't know, and I ask you to draw a tree. So you need to know what we are talking about now. You have to follow the same order. So the position of adjectives, another example, adjectives in English, adjectives appear before the noun they modify. But in French, they typically follow the noun they modify. You see the difference? So, of course, we're not going to have the same trees. So, here's an example from English, from French. So, notice that adjectives come after nouns, which is different from English. So, this is the rule of the NP in French. The adjective phrase comes after the noun. But in English, the adjective phrase must come before the noun. So when you are drawing the tree, you must pay attention to this. When you are drawing the tree, the adjective phrase must be branched after the noun. Okay? Now, another example, the position of the object. Let's focus only on the object of the NP. In English, as you know, object in P's follow the verb. Okay, but in some languages, the object comes before the verb. This is very strange in Japanese, for example. The object first, then the verb. So when you are drawing the tree, you have to pay attention to this. Here is an example from Japanese. So we have letter, which is tigami, o is the object, morpheme, and then the verb, yonda. So you see the object first, then the verb. So this is the rule of the VP, which is different from the rule of the VP in English. In English, the NP comes after the verb, the head, but in Japanese, the NP first, then the verb, because the object comes before the verb. The position of the subject and the VP. Again, languages differ in terms of the position of the subject and the VP. For example, in Moroccan Arabic, we may have a sentence which begins with the VP first, الجملة الفعلية. Okay? So, and the VP first, in every sentence, you may start يعتبر الولد, etc. So you may start with the VP, then the subject. Okay? Which is different from English. So while in English the subject precedes the VP, in some languages, the subject of the sentence follows not only the verb and its object. The verb and its object. Okay, here is an example. Look at the glossary first. Cook, which is ereno, fach, rice, inago, mother. So my mother cooked rice. So the verb is cook, the object is rice, the subject is mother inago. So in this language, the subject is the last one. You start with the verb and the object, then the subject, which is completely different from English. So now, what is the rule of the TP in this language? So the TP consists of the VP, then the NP. Okay. You see, the TP, which is the sentence, begins with the VP, the subject, the VP, the verb phrase, then the NP. But in English, it's the NP, then the VP. So again, you have to pay attention to this, because not all human languages begin with the subject. Okay? Languages without phrase structure and free word order language. Some languages, okay, don't have any phrase structure. We cannot use the phrase structure because they have free word order. So there are many languages in the world in which it appears that there are no sentences but simply complicated words. Look at this example. I think this is a very strange piece of information, but it's true. Look at this language, Nahua, spoken in Mexico. This is just complicated word. It's considered a sentence. Nimiktomimaka. So this is for them, it's a sentence. It's only a word. They have only complicated words. Okay? Nimiktomimaka. So how can we branch? How can we draw a tree for this word? Of course, it's difficult. Why? Because we need to think of which morpheme represents I, which one represents the future will, which one represents give, which morpheme represents you, which one for money. And then we have to decompose, divide it into smaller morphemes. Or language of this type are called polysynthetic languages. You will see this in morphology. So how can we generate phrase structure rules for these languages? It's very difficult because it's only a complicated word, okay, and free word order. So we can't either, there is no way, or as I said, we have to decompose the word into smaller morphemes. We have to know which morpheme represents I, which morpheme represents the future, etc. Okay, another challenge to phrase structure comes from languages with relatively free word order. This is another problem because you don't know the word order of a language. It can be subject, verb, object. It can be verb, object, subject. It can be object, subject, verb. So it has free word order. So you don't know which one to follow. For example, a language in Austria, Walperi, in this language, the verb and the noun phrase can appear in any order. When you have a verb and a noun phrase, you can have any possible order as long as the auxiliary particle ka appears in the second position. This is the only condition. When the particle ka appears in the second position of the sentence, then you can have any position of the verb and the NP. Here are some examples. So here, ka, this is the auxiliary. It appears in the second position. This is the first word. This is the second position. Okay? So this is man, auxiliary, and this is kangaroo, and this is Panterne, spear. Okay? So you may have this order. You may have this order. Look at man, the position of man, the NP, and look at the position of the verb. Panterne, spear. So when ka comes in the second position, you can have any possible ordering of the verb and the NP. Here in A, we have the NP in the initial position. In B, we have the NP, the final one. And in C, we have the NP in the middle position. Look at the verb phrase, verb. We have it in A in the final position. And here in B, we have it in the middle position. And in C, we have the verb in the initial position. So how can we use the tree structure for this language, which has all possible word orders? It's a very difficult question. Okay. So similarly, in Latin, all the following word orders are possible. In Latin language, for example, look at the word for soldiers, militis, and city, urban. So you can have it in the initial, you can have it in the middle, you can have it in the final. Look at urban, city. You can have it the second one. Okay, you can have it in different positions. This is problematic for not only expert theory but phrase structure rules. Okay, so in these languages, the neutral order, when the order is not determined by topic or focus, for example, is used to generate PS rules, which means that the only thing we can do is to generate, for example, for this language, the only thing we can do is to generate the tree structure for the sentences where there is no ka. Okay, because the problem here is created by ka as an auxiliary in the second position. But we know that when there is no ka as the auxiliary, there is only one order. But when there is ka as the second here in the second position, then you have multiple options. But what we need to focus on is when there is no ka. So when the word orders change because of the topic or focus, it's generated by transformation rules. Now, a piece of advice. If I give you in the exam, if I give a sentence from a language that you don't speak, focus on word by word order, okay? Word by word order. This is what you should branch, okay? This one. John, Balav, Dhaka. You have to respect this order. Don't draw in tree this order. John saw the dog. I want this order. You have to respect the order of that language. Okay? Here is an example. So John in this language, John dog saw in this language, the object precedes the verb. We have the object dog Balav then we have verb daka, which means that we have to respect this order. So this is a sentence, so we should have TP, we should have the NP, John, then we should have the VP, but the NP, which is complement, must come before the verb, then the verb. Okay, look at the second sentence. Janeli indela balava daka. So here, this is the verb. The complement of the verb is before, it precedes it. This is a prepositional phrase. Remember what I said earlier. In this language, this is a right-headed language, which means that the preposition phrase is Janil indela, window from. We already know that this is from window, it's a preposition phrase, but we know that what is specific about this language is that this preposition phrase, the head is on the right. Okay, so please, this is not a noun phrase, it's a preposition phrase, except that in this language, the head is the second one. Okay, now let's see the tree, how to branch it. You have to respect this order. Now look at the last sentence. Look at the last sentence. So this is a sentence, TP. The NP is John. The VP is the whole. Is Ayag Tadi Balava Daka. So use the English translation just to help you understand that this is the verb phrase. Okay, so what is the NP? The NP is his big dog, which means Ayag Tadi Balav. So this is the NP. The determiner, how do we know that this is a determiner? From the translation, his. So his is a determiner in English, so it must be a determiner in this language. So Ayag, this is determiner. Big adjective in English, and it means tadi, so we know that tadi is an adjective in this language. We write it here, adjective phrase, adjective tad. Dog is a noun in English, so balav is a noun in this language, so we'll write it here. Okay, daka is a verb. So this is similar to English. There is only one difference. What is it? Yes, please. What is the difference?
The position of phrases.
Yeah, the position of the complement, the position of the object in this language, the object precedes the verb. In English, the verb is always followed by the object. So if you have a sentence from this language or any other language, please respect the position of the phrases, respect the position of the complement, the verb, the subject, etc. Okay, so here another example, the second one, John, Janelle, Indela, Balava, Daka. So what do we have here? We have the subject, which is John, and we have the verb phrase. In the verb phrase, as we said, we have the complement, which is Balava. We have the complement. And we have the preposition and phrase, window from, Janelle, Indela. Okay, so this is the NP, the complement, and the preposition phrase modifies the VP, because from window, just think of it in English. John saw the dog from window, which means from window, which means he saw from window. So it modifies, okay, it modifies the verb. So this is the importance of translation, okay, to help you understand which one modifies the other. So the preposition phrase here is Janil Indella. But what is interesting is the preposition, which is the head, is on the right, and the complement of the preposition is on the left. So in this language, in the preposition phrase, preposition on the left, on the right, and the modifier or the complement here in P is on the left. I think this is the end. Okay, is there any question So we have finished chapter 3, and next time we move to chapter 4. But before that, maybe I'm thinking of an extra session. It could be on Friday or Saturday, just for the exercises. Okay, it could be 1 hour or 1 hour and 30 minutes, just for exercises on ambiguity, exercises on constituency, exercises on bracketed diagrams, clauses, etc. Is there any question about the whole chapter?
So,
Yes, please. Yes, Mr. Yes.
is it possible for a phrase to fall under two constituency tests?
Yes. So some phrases, some phrases or some group of words may successfully, okay, pass all the tests, and some phrases or group of words may fail one test and pass the others. Some group of words may fail 2 tests and pass the others. So you have to try at least 2 tests. One is not enough. Did I answer your question, Mr. Yasir? Because I didn't hear
Yes,
you
sir.
well. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other question, please? You're welcome.
Professor,
Yeah, Ms. Safa.
how we can draw a tree if we have a verb in infinitive?
For example,
For example, the man used a knife to kill the king.
yes. So what is the syntactic function of to kill the man? Okay. You don't know the function?
It's an object.
It's not an object. To, for, in order to. This is an adjunct. Okay. So to kill. So you can use IP. Okay. IP. Infinitive phrase, and you branch it. IP. I for the infinitive, and you continue. We'll see this, but you can use IP, infinitive phrase.
Okay, Professor.
Any question, please? Okay, so we stop here, and I think this Saturday or Friday, so we are going to have a 1 hour session, okay, just to do some exercises. I will think of certain phrases, sentences, and post them share them with you in Google Classroom, and you have to draw the trees before we meet. Okay?
Okay, Professor.
Professor, thank you.
Welcome, thank you, and good luck. See you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Professor.
Yes, one more, please.
I have no question, but could you please share with us the slides of this session in Google Classroom?
I'm still thinking of it, okay? Because I told you last time that I'm just copying from the book. Everything exists in the book. Anyhow, I will see. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.